Now, toileting sometimes just happens with children and they are toileted like that, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to get our children confident with the process of going to the toilet. But it's a very complicated idea for some children. And why is it complicated for some children? Is that it takes a lot of putting connections of doing different things in different orders, and little children can only often manage to do 2 or 3 things at once, like pick up blocks. Often they will pick up the red blocks and won't pick up the yellow blocks. So what I wanted to talk about today is to discuss signs of readiness for toileting and discuss how we can coach our children through this developmental milestone. The first thing I just want to say is this is my little diagram of the bladder and where it actually sits. The size of a 3-year-old's bladder can only hold 90 mils. So 90 mils is not a great deal when you think about it. So what 90 mils is a dessert spoon holds 20 mils. So it's roughly 4.5 dessert spoons, and that's the maximum a child can actually handle. Now the bowel, what happens with the bowel is that most children are toileted to go with the urine part, but the bowel takes a little bit longer. And what happens for some children, they don't want to do poos, and when they actually hold on to the poo in this last part of the bowel here, the body reabsorbs the water, so the children hold on, and when you go to the toilet, it makes it really uncomfortable to be able to go. So that we've got to get some children through that little issue of how to go to the toilet, and I'll quickly talk about that as we go along. So when are our children ready for toileting? The first thing is that if they stand in the bath and they do a wee and they go as it pours out, they're not ready for toileting. Does that? But when they start to be able to follow simple instructions, pick up the yellow toys, pick up the red toys, they've got some language, and we need to use the correct language regarding toileting. And what I mean by the correct language is that we've got to be able to call the penis and the vagina, not give them your little nicknames that sometimes people give them, and we've got to be able to talk about it as wee and poo. That's how I see it, because you don't want to be in the supermarket and your child to yell out in a very loud voice, I want to do the words starting with an S and ending in a T. All right? So we've got to get the language that is actually right and people actually understand it. And finally, they've got to be able to keep a nappy dry for 2 hours. So if they can keep a nappy dry for 2 hours, they are somewhere about 18 months to 3-year-olds, all right? Why do you think children are slower now at toileting? Because they are. Because many teachers will tell me that children are going to school at 6 and still not toileted. They're still wearing pull-ups. Why do you think we've got this problem? Yeah. The new nappies keep us dry, so we never get that feeling. For some of you, when you were toileted, you were in cloth nappies and you got that uncomfortable feeling and you knew it was time to pull off your nappy. Does that? So today with the disposable nappies, and I know some of you just heard the last lady talk, with the disposable nappies, it means that it makes it harder for children to actually know that they need to go to the toilet and start the process. We do need to go out and actually purchase some things before we actually start the toileting process. These little terry toweling panties you can get from Big W, Kmart, Target. I haven't looked lately to see how much they are, but the reason why these are really good is they've got elastic around the legs to keep the poo in, all right? The urine will still come out, but it will keep the poo in. Little girls are sometimes easier to toilet than little boys. Why do you think that might be? Little girls love to impress. Little boys sometimes don't care a damn what's happening out there. So little girls like the frilly little panties they can put on with all the little girly things. And we need to be able to talk to boys about being big boys and wearing big boy jocks. Does that? And work with that little bit. So we also need to have a footstool so that our child will be able to put their legs on to do, because we need to use these muscles to open our bowels. All right? So if you lift your legs up for a minute like this and then try to bear down as if you're going to the toilet, you can't do it. So that's why we need to have a footstool, and it makes a child feel secure. I don't mind if you use a potty. It's just a potty. Potty is really hard to carry around if you have a little potty. You know, put it in your bag to go out. You need a big bag to go out with to do that. So sometimes a toilet seat is much easier that you can use. You also need, other than having the step, you also need to make sure your toilet is something your child can get into easily when we're toileting them. Does that? Because they've got such a short little break to go from here to here when they want to go to the toilet. So we've got to be able to make sure the door is open and they can get to the toilet. Does that? So they've also got to be able to take off their underwear, and some children like to have their shoes off completely and all their pants off. So it is important that we actually are able to teach our children how to take their underwear off. They also need to learn how to get the right amount of toilet paper, and they also need to learn how to wipe their bottoms. Does that? And that's quite a challenging, especially if we have a little chubby child, because to get the hand around it can be a challenge for them. And then they have to learn to get on and off the toilet, and then to be able to flush the toilet and pull the pants up and wash and dry their hands. So there's a whole lot of things a child has to learn to be able to do. So how do I know my child's ready to go to the toilet? If I'm watching my child closely, I will see this happening as they're playing. All right? They'll start to grab, and that's a sign that your child has got this connection from the brain to the bladder. It's developmentally doesn't happen until 18 months to 3.5. Your children developmentally do things along the way, like they learn to roll and they learn to crawl and they learn to walk. So this is the last connection that comes in from here, from the brain to the bowel and bladder. All right? So if your child is one of those children that likes to go behind the curtains, all right, to do a poo, we need to be watching that very carefully, or suddenly taking their nappy off because it is wet. Does that? So it's a good idea to most probably start observing your child, talk about it. One of the things that I like to do with all children is to talk about any change through books. And these are just an example of books that you can get out there. All right. These have just come out of our toileting box at Ngala. So I'm not recommending any of these over each other. You can go to the library, you can get some books, and you can start to tell the story with your child of what you want to happen. All right? So what our role as parents is to be able to support and coach our child. Our role of any parental change, any change with our child, our role is to coach them. And so we have to be patient because mistakes happen. Lots of mistakes happen, and means we have some little accidents happen. We have to observe them. We have to role model them. And so what you do when you have some achievement, get on the phone and ring Tony Abbott. He's sitting in Canberra with very little to do. He wants to know your child is toileted. Does that? He wants your vote. So he'd be very happy to talk to you. So let your child hear you say on the phone to anybody how fantastic they are because they're now achieved this milestone. Does that? He's able to do wheeze in the toilet, or he's able to do poos. we have to role model them. And I know that's the toileting process, and I know that's hard for some of us because we like to go to the toilet by ourselves. But when you have children, they need to know what is going on, all right? So they need to know and stand in the toilet while you're there asking you what's happening, you know? Are you doing a wee or a poo? And be prepared for them to tell the neighbours when they ring up on the phone, oh, Mum's in the toilet doing a poo. You know, that's a part of being a parent in there. And for little boys, they do need to learn to go to the toilet sitting down to start with, all right? Because it is very hard to concentrate here, because if somebody says hello from behind, they turn. So teaching them to actually stand up is an art, does that? And then that has to be taught by Dad. And I don't care. You can do lots of things, Dad. You can have sword fights over the toilet with the wee coming down, or you might be able to teach your child, if you're out in the bush somewhere, how to write your name in the letter of your name in the sand, or put as my brother did many years ago, was taught by a big cousin to put a sun on the tank, because I grew up in the country, and he's made sure all the nephews know how to put a sun on the tank as they were growing up. So that's a dad's role, to be able to teach a little boy to be able to stand and to go to the toilet. So with our little girls, we need to make it fun. We need to talk to them about what we're going to do. We need to role model what's happening, tell them what the process is, and to be able to be prepared for some setbacks. Now, wee is easily achieved. Some children will just want nappies on to do the poo once they've achieved the wee, because it can be a little bit challenging for some children, because I think they think when they're sitting on the toilet that a part of them is coming out. Does that? And so if that is your child and you are finding that a challenge to get them to do poo, make sure they have plenty of water, plenty of fibre in their diet, so that we're keeping everything, and we gang up on the poo, all right? So we go, I nearly had a sneaky poo. Have you had a sneaky poo? So let's catch that sneaky poo. Does that? So we don't ever say, just go to the toilet, just do the poo, and, that's naughty. You've had that accident on the ground. We always go, let's catch that sneaky poo. Let's try and catch that in the toilet. Does that? And a good time to sit a child on the toilet is about 2 hours after they've had a drink, if they're doing it, and plan to do it when they are showing the signs. They are telling us when they're actually ready. So we have to have lots of time to do some fun and practice and celebrate the successes. All right? Your child will lead you in the readiness journey, but we get busy as parents, and we don't necessarily watch what they're telling us through their play in going to the toilet. Little boys, in having language and talking to little boys, every 4-year-old, by the way, their worst jokes in the world are about bums. All right? That is a normal joke for a 4-year-old. They'll go, simmer bum. And that becomes a little bit of what I call toilet language out there. We can have accidents, but when you're going out somewhere with your children, please think about where all the toilet stops are, all right? And you will start to say, please go to the toilet before we go out. But remember, you can't continually say that. You've got to be able to let your child, as they get a little bit older. As one of my colleagues said last year, her husband's 45, and she said, come on, we're going up to Lancelin, telling her teenage kids, we're going up to Lancelin. All go to the toilet, please. And she said, John, you haven't been. He said, I am 45. I can decide when and when I don't want to go to the toilet. So, but we do need to be planning where we're going regarding toilet stops. Does that? So when you are in the supermarket, you've got to know where the toilets are when you are going through this toileting experience with your children and celebrate each success. So, as I said, we need a footstool. We need to make sure we've got a seat so we don't go right down with our bottom there. We've got to plan what's going to happen with our child. We need a potty or a toilet, and we need a child to be able to get into the toilet. You may find it very helpful only to have a few pieces of toilet paper there so your child doesn't use the whole roll. Okay? Every child learns differently and at their own pace. Some children need more time, but they do need a lot of time to practice any new skill. And some need more direction and some need more encouragement. But we all get there. Does that? And if anyone is having any challenges, please stop the process if it's not working and let's try again in a week's time. So we actually hold at Ngala 2 education sessions. One is called a toilet education session from 1.5 to 3.5, and then some families find it really challenging, and so their children haven't achieved the toileting when they should have by the time they're ready for school at 3.5. So we're doing a lot more of those families attending that particular workshop. And our helpline is available 7 days a week to be able to manage that. And we've also got a website. Does